Across the Marne, the Aisne, and the Meuse, over which 4 years of World War I had been fought. They traveled farther and faster than any army had traveled before in history. They were a cocky crew, these civilians in uniform, and they kept on rolling and winning till at Metz they ran out of gas. France was liberated. The battle was not over, but the end was in sight, and every sane man in Europe knew what the end would be. After the Battle of the Bulge, they were loose again. They rolled down the long road through Germany, through Koblenz and Coburg, through Erfurt and Bayreuth, and on deep into Germany, where Nazism was doomed. Walter Bowen is home now, cultivating his garden. The world has given him a great deal in the last decade, but it has also taken something away. That something is time, the slack time he always had in the past to create and train an army against aggression. Today, that time is measured not in years, months, weeks, but in seconds. Back in America, as Walter Bowen and his young neighbor measure out their quiet days, other men are watching them, thinking about them, assessing their strength and resolution. Across the sea in Russia, there are men who think about them day and night. This enormous military machine goes abroad or stays at home on the basis of one factor alone: what the free world has in reserve against it. In the Far East, a searching red tide floods or ebbs according to their estimate of what Americans are capable of, what we have in reserve. As Walter Bowen drives through the peaceful streets of his hometown, he knows he lives with danger. And he, his young friend, and perhaps a handful of others like them, are doing something about it. In centers like this, across the nation, a few Minutemen gather. Here they supplement their civilian skills with training in the complex know-how of today's Army. There is much to learn for the new men and the veterans, because the changes have been tremendous since Walter Bowen's old khaki pants went to war. There are no heroics here. This is a quiet, unspectacular business, involving only a few hours a week, but it's important. These men and their instructors are the foundation of new units which must be ready in case of emergency. But the painful truth is that there are not enough men in these centers. Outside that window, too many go about their own concerns, careless of this lesson of history. In the past, we had barely enough time, barely enough know-how to get by. There will be no future unless we are ready now. You don't have to go to a reserve center to understand this fact of life, that the enemy can pick the time, the place, and the form of attack. Thousands more men must go to reserve centers if we are to be ready to meet that attack in any form, or by our readiness to prevent its ever happening. Fortunately, our reserve training program makes it possible for men to achieve that readiness without leaving their homes or families. Every day of every week, America lives in a race with time, and history holds the stopwatch. The freedom of our nation, of all liberty-loving nations, depends on this simple but important duty. Today more than ever, the world needs America's strength in reserve.
And so today, thousands of young men throughout our country are attending weekly reserve meetings, advancing in their Army Reserve career as they advance in their civilian one. Their numbers are increasing as more and more men accept with pride the responsibility of the citizen soldier. But the defense of freedom is a gigantic job. It's a job that had its beginning with the founding of our country. It will not end until there is true peace throughout the world. It's a big job, and it's everybody's job. Yours and mine together. This is Sergeant Stuart Queen, inviting you to be with us again next week for another look at your Army in action on The Big Picture.
The Big Picture is a weekly television report to the nation on the activities of the Army at home and overseas. Produced by the Army Pictorial Center, presented by the United States Army in cooperation with this station. You too can be an important part of the big picture. You can proudly serve with the best equipped, the best trained, the best fighting team in the world today, the United States Army.